Hey gang, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and thank you very much for checking today's video out. And back by popular demand, it's story time again. And what I'm going to do today, guys, is I'm going to tell you the 3 worst times that I've been stuck in my boat over the course of 35 years of professional fishing. This is truly being stuck. This is hardcore OG getting stuck stories. So I think you guys will find it pretty interesting what I went through on this. Just a couple quick things, guys. Just want to remind everybody, anyone is interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, just shoot me a private lesson on my Facebook page, Randy Blockett Professional Angler. And I do most of my lessons on Table Rock or Stockton Lake. And also, anybody interested in just a great guide trip on Lake of the Ozarks, one of my best friends is one of the top guides on Lake of the Ozarks. He's been ripping them up there lately. So if any guys are wanting to go to Lake of the Ozarks, just shoot me a private message on my Facebook page, and I'll get you in contact with my buddy up there. Much appreciated. Okay, guys, 3 stories here. Now, actually, I went over a couple of these before, like when I very first started the YouTube channel. I think I told a couple of these. I don't even think those videos are up anymore, so I think it's going to be interesting to hear. So I'm gonna tell you guys about the 3 worst times I've ever been stuck, and it's I've never forgot them. So let's start off with number 1. Number 1, let's go to Lake Okeechobee. We were fishing an FLW tournament down there. It's probably been close to 20 years ago now. And the water was extremely low. It was like an all-time record low on Lake Okeechobee. And you could barely run out in the lake. There was just hardly no water out there. And everybody was fishing the canals, that was doing good in the tournament. That's where the deep water was. So anyway, I found this one canal. I actually launched in this canal and I just ripped them in there. I mean, it was just like they were biting like crazy. But I had to figure out how to get in there because the only way I could access this canal was to run to it from the main lake. So I ran to it and I got about probably maybe 100 yards from it, and it got super shallow. I mean, like this deep shallow. So anyway, I didn't know if I could make it across there, even blowing it as fast as I could. So I got out and I put my boat, I just beached my boat out in the middle of the lake because it was only a foot deep. And I walked over there to the canal, and it's like some places it was 2 feet deep, some places it was a foot deep, some places it was like 4 or 5 inches deep. And it was just like that all over in there. So anyway, a buddy of mine, Danny Cree, was, he was, practicing with me. And I go, Danny, I'm going to try to get in there. I'm going to try to blow in there. So Danny got out and he was watching me go in there. And so I got in there, and it was like 100 yards across this shallow flat. And I got about halfway through it, and I'm blowing up mud, and I'm going like 50 miles an hour. And all of a sudden, I get slower and slower and slower, and I can't let up. If I let off the gas, I'm just going to get stuck. And I just kept the gas wide open. And I just got so shallow, it just just like that. And I got stuck, and the boat was actually at an angle like that. So I'm hopelessly stuck here. There's no way I'm pushing this thing off of here. There's no way, it's there forever. So I'm like, oh God, what am I gonna do now? So I'm wading around out there in ankle deep water. And all of a sudden, here comes this giant freaking super loud airboat. And they saw what was going on. They saw me wading out there. So they come out there, and there's about 4 or 5 guys in this thing, and they are drunk as skunks. All of them are super drunk. They got this big giant cooler. First thing they asked me if I wanted a beer out there. And one of them said, and I had, at the time I had my wrap on my boat said Mega Bass. So it said in big letters down the boat, it said Mega Bass. And there's one of these guys goes, Mega Bass. He goes, how about some mega ass? That's what I'm talking about. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I got in here? It's like the scene out of Deliverance, So these guys were hooping and hollering. They thought it was funny as could be, and they were cussing, and it was a sketchy situation. So anyway, they go, well, okay, he go, get up here. We're going to hook on this sumbitch with this tow rope, and we'll get you off of here. So they put this tow rope on my boat, told me to get in the airboat with them. So I got in the airboat with them, and they're just like all drunk, complete. And this guy nails this airboat. And this was one of those high-powered airboats. And all of a sudden I look back there and it's just blowing mud all over my boat. And he's getting it off the flat and he gets it out there in deeper water. And my boat is covered with mud. I mean, it's like the carpet's covered with mud. It's just completely trash. So anyway, I got off of there. It said to spend like $50 at the car wash to get the boat clean. That was number one. Number two, this was a tournament. I was down at Lake Livingston, Texas, Bassmaster Invitational at Lake Livingston. And I was trying to this was another one of those deals. I was trying to access this shallow creek, and the lake was really low, and this creek, the lake was so low, there was a sandbar at the mouth of this creek, but this sandbar was only like 15 foot wide and maybe that far out of the water. So anyway, I got out of my boat and I walked the bank back in there, and I was just casting off the bank, and I was getting bit right and left in there. And I said, I've got to get back in this creek. So I said, I'm going to try to jump this thing. And I was by myself. So anyway, I hit the thing, and I was not going fast enough, and I didn't have the motor trimmed up high enough, and I got stuck on top of this sandbar. So my boat is literally on dry ground on top of this sandbar. Another way I'm never getting off. So it was sort of set up neat because there was a yard right next to the entrance of this creek, like literally right on the creek bank. So I called a wrecker in town. I told him where I was, and he comes over there, and he could position his wrecker where he could pull me off of the thing. So he got the wrecker rope on there, pulled me off of this thing, and I go, just wait just a second. I got to try this one more time. So I went in there a second time, hit it harder and faster and trimmed out, and I hopped that thing, got in that creek, and wound up finishing in the top 10 in the tournament. But that was a memorable one. And the last one I'll go over, this was a tournament at the Arkansas River out of Little Rock. We were fishing I think it was a Bassmaster tournament. This has been 25 years ago. And if you guys have ever fished the Arkansas River, it's pretty sketchy. I was running on the back side of this island. You know, the main river was like right here, and then there was a huge island, and there was a flat on the back side. And anyway, I had been through there a couple of years before and didn't have any problem, but the water was lower. And I said, I'm gonna try to run this backwater through here because there was a couple places I wanted to hit back there. And I got in there. I got about halfway in there, and it got shallower and shallower and shallower. And I'm throwing up mud behind the boat. Now, this has been going along for a long time, and it's like I'm so far in it, there's no way I can turn around. There's no way I can shut down. And it gets shallower and shallower, and all of a sudden, it just bottomed out, and I got stuck. And this was a bad situation because I was in the middle of nowhere. There's no way that I could get any help with this thing. So anyway, this was a really soft bottom. It was like a soft sand. It's almost like you could scoop it up, and it was like when I got out of the boat, I'd sink down to my waist. It was really soft. So I said, and I didn't have any. This was before cell phones, so I didn't have a cell phone either. So it's like, what the heck am I going to do? And it's like 3:00 in the afternoon. This was the second day of practice. So anyway, I got out of there, and I got the boat. I got up, and I maneuvered the boat to turn it back around the other way because I didn't know what was ahead of me. So I said, I got to figure out how to get out of here. I had probably 300 yards I had to go across this flat that I was kicking up mud on. And the boat was so shallow, it was sort of almost at an angle there, but the bottom was real soft. So anyway, I got the boat turned around, and at the time I had one of those Mercury Paralift jack plates it was a scissor plate that went up and down so you could lower it super high or super low. And I said, the only way I'm getting out of here is just to try to goose this thing and go forward a little bit at a time. So what I did is I got in the boat, and I trimmed the motor up, and I started goosing it, and I goose it and would go about that far and then bog down. So then, I started the motor back up, and I'd goose it a little bit more, and it went about that far each time. So I did this for an hour, and every time that I did it, sometimes the motor would start overheating, and I'd have to wait for 10 or 15 minutes. Eventually it's dark. So I gotta stay there all night. So I slept in the boat all night long there, didn't have any cell phone, and got up the next morning and started doing the same thing. I started inching forward like 6 to 12 inches at a time, have to shut the motor off, it'd get overheat. And it took me 5 hours and I got out of there. And when I finally got out of there, I knew that I had trashed the motor. I knew that the motor was going to blow because it had been abused. I trimmed the motor up, and literally there was like no propeller blades left. I had churned up so much sand by doing that for 5 hours that the blades on my propeller, I had just a regular size propeller. The blades were like maybe 3 or 4 inches long, and they were thin as a potato chip. I couldn't even get up on plane, so I had to put my spare prop on, ran back in, went to the service crew, told them, they went through it, and never had any problem with the motor the rest of the year. So anyway, guys, that's just 3 stories, times I've been epically stuck there. Again, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk later.